Are you overly emotional or are you triggered? My name is Carrie. I'm a motivational speaker and executive coach, and I focus on burnout prevention for folks who work in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. If you're curious to learn about your burnout archetype, head on over to carriezcoaching.com and take the free quiz. Today, we're talking about being triggered in reactions and why that's a problem. So I work with a lot of folks who are really passionate and they have a lot of big emotions and they care so much about people and feelings. And one of the things that we talk about is the difference between being triggered in a situation and actually feeling your feelings about a situation. And the reason that being triggered is, let's talk about that. So basically, when you're triggered, it's your brain's response to a situation where it goes into defense mode. It thinks something is unsafe here. I need to protect the body, protect this human that I'm in at all costs. And while that's great for keeping us alive, it's not so great for keeping our nerves intact. It's not so great for having us show up in that moment in a way that we really are in control of and that we want to show up in. So the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn responses aren't necessarily a response that we're choosing. It's how our body is saying, do this. So, so we're going to go over 6 ways that are 6 signs that you are triggered and not in control of yourself. And that's going to help you learn how to show up so that you can recognize that and show up in that moment in a way that feels true to who you are, so that you're not going to feel guilty afterwards. You're not going to not remember it. You're not going to have to apologize. So we want to be able to recognize when we are triggered so that we can take some action in real time. So here are 6 signs that you are triggered and not in control. Number 1 is reacting and not responding. So using these words, reacting is basically that gut instinct, that visceral response, the thing that just comes naturally to you. It's usually pretty intense, but it happens very quickly. Whereas responding is what comes after the pause. Responding is when we've taken the moment to say, okay, here's what's going on, here's how I feel about it, and now we're going to be very intentional about how we respond to the situation. So reacting versus responding. So if you are having a very quick, immediate response to what's happening there, you're likely in your reaction state. So if it's the first thing that happens, we're going to learn to take the pause and say, whoop, I am reacting right now and not responding. Number 2 is saying or doing things that you don't really mean. So again, when we are in reactive state, our brain is saying, protect, 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 defend this person. And so we do go into defense mode. And oftentimes when we're in defense mode, that has us acting or saying things to go on the offensive. So we go into defensive mode by taking the offensive approach, and we start to attack the other person. We start to say things that we don't really mean because we're trying to do everything that we can to keep the attention off of us and how we feel or perceive that we are being under attack. So we need to redirect that attention. So if you find yourself saying or doing something that you don't mean, you're probably in a triggered state. Number 3 is feeling guilty after a situation. So if you are saying and doing things that later you go, oh, I really shouldn't have done that. I actually was, that was not something that I should have done. I really feel bad about that. I definitely owe somebody an apology. That is a sign that you were in a triggered state. So I know this is after the fact, but basically now you can take this information and say, okay, I was feeling guilty about that interaction. So how was I feeling in that interaction? What's something that I can take from that that's going to help me recognize that I was triggered there? So this is sort of a backwards approach to help you identify when you are triggered so that you can recognize some of your individual symptoms. But if you feel guilty after a situation, it's probably, again, because you weren't acting with intention and you were doing things that you wouldn't have done if you were responding to the situation. Number 4 is feeling shaky. So if you feel shaky in the moment, again, this could be a nervous response. Your brain is on overdrive. It's sending signals everywhere and saying, okay, we need to be hyper vigilant right now. So you might get a little bit shaky. And again, if this is something that you notice in real time, you can say, oh, I'm probably having a reaction to the situation right now. I'm a little bit triggered. My body is definitely in it's ready to go. It is pumped up. And so if you start to notice the shakes, then that's again a sign that you are entering into that triggered state. Number 5 is tense muscles. So when we get stressed out, we tend to start clenching, whether we notice it or not. So if you start to feel that you're tensing up in your traps or in your jaw, or if you're holding your hands or squeezing your muscles, but you will start to get tense muscles. And again, we know this after the fact because then we're sore for no reason. But if in the moment you have this where you get like the deer in the headlights, that's a little bit of that freeze response where you just tense up, that's a great sign that you have been triggered. So if somebody says something and you kind of flinch just a little bit, that's a sign that you've been triggered and you might need to take that pause so that you can respond instead of react. And number 6 is feeling warm or overheated. So whenever you're having that response, your body, again, is sending signals. It's firing on all synapses, and it's going to do everything that it can to protect itself. But one of those things that's going to happen as a result is you might start to feel your actual body temperature rise. You can feel your face start to flush a bit. You might start sweating even, but this can really be like an internal, like you can actually feel your temperature rising and it feels like your blood is boiling. So that is another indicator that you have been triggered by a situation, and for you to say, okay, hold on, I need to calm down from this and come back into my regulated state before I proceed. So those were 6 signs that you were triggered and not in control of yourself. And these are great indicators for you to get to learn how you do respond in those moments so that when you are triggered in the future, you can recognize that and start to take immediate action. So to prevent you from doing something that you don't really mean, because we don't want to feel guilty about our interactions. We don't want to feel like we weren't in control of ourselves. We want to maintain those relationships in a way that really is genuine for us, because when we're not being true to ourselves, that really weighs on us, kind of compounds. So learning how to recognize triggers is going to be super helpful for showing up much more authentically in this world and not feeling as much of the weight that can come with reacting to situations. If you like what you heard today, hit subscribe, and don't forget to check out my website where you can find your burnout archetype at carriezcoaching.com, and then click the quiz to find your type.